We typically imagine doctors as educated, knowledgeable individuals who cure diseases and save lives. However, the doctor in our story is the complete opposite. He alone is responsible for taking hundreds of lives. During his trips to the funeral service, Alan Massey, a funeral home owner, was surprised to see that a large number of his customers were all patients of a doctor. Arriving to handle the burial arrangements, he found the deceased either seated in a chair or reclining on a sofa, in a relaxed state and neatly attired. Their appearance contrasted sharply with someone who had succumbed to illness. Harold Frederick Shipman, born into a working-class family on June 14, 1946, had an unusual childhood. This was largely due to the influence of his beloved mother. Harold's mother, who believed her son to be different from other children, always decided which children he could play with. This behavior only became more evident in the following years. Although Harold had an older sister 7 years his senior and a younger brother 4 years his junior, his mother saw him as the child with the greatest potential. In elementary school, Harold excelled in his studies, but his performance deteriorated dramatically upon entering high school. Here, he only interacted with classmates on the football and track teams. This social isolation stemmed not just from his mother's instilled dislike for his peers, but also from the demands of caring for her during her final stages of lung cancer. Harold shouldered the immense burden of caring for his beloved mother as she battled lung cancer. He was there for her every agonizing moment, watching her strength fade. In the final days, the relentless disease brought Vera unimaginable pain. Without access to automatic anesthetic injection machines, a desperate call to the family doctor became their only option. Harold watched in horror as his mother writhed in terrible pain. A single injection of morphine from the doctor brought her immediate relief. This pattern continued until his mother's passing. Following his mother's death, Harold became determined to pursue medicine. He gained admission to Leeds University of Medicine after passing the required entrance exams. Years of dedicated study culminated in his graduation, allowing him to begin his internship at the hospital. At 19, Harold married and soon welcomed 2 children into his life. Seeking a career change, he applied to a private hospital in Todmorden, a small town in Yorkshire, northern England. There, a newfound confidence blossomed. He began to socialize more widely, earning the respect of patients and colleagues alike. Shortly after, Harold's work efficiency at Todmorden began to decline. To conceal this, he fabricated a diagnosis of epilepsy for himself. However, the truth came to light when hospital staff reviewed pharmacy records. They discovered Harold had been prescribing excessive amounts of pethidine to numerous patients, often repeatedly. Upon discovering Harold's pethidine abuse, the hospital launched an investigation. It revealed that numerous patients received unnecessary prescriptions for the drug, which Harold diverted for his own use. Before the disciplinary board, Harold admitted to pethidine abuse and was subsequently fired. In 1975, he was forced to undergo rehabilitation and fined for offenses related to controlled substances and fraudulent prescriptions. The first to raise suspicion about Harold Shipman was Alan Massey, a funeral center owner. Massey was struck by the unusual frequency of deaths among Dr. Shipman's patients. When called to prepare bodies for burial, he often found the deceased, whether seated in a chair or lying on a sofa, in a relaxed state and neatly dressed. This contrasted sharply with the appearance of someone who had succumbed to a typical illness. It seemed as though these individuals had died suddenly, in the very position they were found. Alarmed by his suspicions, funeral director Alan Massey confronted Harold Shipman and requested a medical examination. However, finding nothing outwardly suspicious, Alan let the matter drop. His daughter, Debbie, remained unconvinced and sought help from Dr. Susan Booth. In the UK, cremation permits require verification from an independent doctor to ensure the validity of the permit issued by the attending physician. Upon hearing Debbie's concerns, Dr. Booth visited the funeral home to observe a body awaiting cremation. This observation, along with the knowledge of Dr. Linda, ultimately led to a police report. Despite a cursory review of medical records, which revealed seemingly reasonable treatment plans and causes of death, the police investigation remained incomplete. Unaware that Harold falsified medical records after the killings, they overlooked a crucial step, examining his criminal history. This omission prevented them from uncovering his past drug abuse and fraudulent prescriptions. Driven by no known motive, not lust, power, notoriety, money, or ideology, Harold Shipman murdered at least 215 people. The true number of his victims may be even higher. The central question, why did he kill, remains unanswered. To this day, Harold Shipman stands out among serial killers due to the enduring mystery surrounding his motives and the true number of victims, a secret he took to his grave. On June 24, 1998, 81-year-old Kathleen Grundy, the former mayor of Hyde City, who was a healthy and very active woman, suddenly died. Mrs. Grundy was found dead, lying on the sofa in a neat outfit. Harold had visited her a few hours earlier with the reason of taking blood to research the phenomenon of aging. The bad news was immediately reported to Angela Woodruff, her daughter. Harold confirmed that Mrs. Grundy was dead and that no further examination was needed because the doctor had just examined her a few hours before her death. After Angela buried her mother, she received news from the lawyers that they had a copy of Mrs. Grundy's will. A lawyer herself, Angela had long kept the original copy of Grundy's will sent in 1986. Reading the copy from the lawyers, she immediately saw that it was a fake document. To collect evidence and confirm Kathleen Grundy's murder, the police exhumed her grave and took hair and clothing samples for testing. The report on the cause of Ms. Grundy's death revealed an abnormally high level of morphine in her body, enough to cause death within 3 hours. Following the death of elderly patient Kathleen Grundy, investigators expanded their investigation. Their task was complicated by Harold's insistence that no autopsy was necessary due to a clear cause of death and his recommendation for cremation. Most relatives, upon seeing a complete record of Ms. Grundy's illness, treatment, and cause of death on Harold's computer, had no cause for concern. Unaware that Harold falsified the medical records after her death, they accepted the information presented. Harold, despite his perceived cleverness, remained oblivious to a crucial detail: the computer's ability to record all changes made to the hard drive, including his fraudulent edits. Harold Shipman's trial began on October 5, 1999, in the city of Preston, Lancashire. Prosecutor Henriquez argued, all victims, including those who were cremated and those who were buried, did not need treatment with morphine or diamorphine, another name for heroin, because none of the patients had a dangerous illness in the final stages. They all died suddenly when Dr. Harold was in their house. He accused Harold of killing 15 patients because he wanted to fulfill his twisted desire to have control over life and death. The first witness was Angela, daughter of Mrs. Kathleen Grundy. Angela testified that her mother, although 81 years old, had been in good health. She also confirmed that the fingerprints on the will belonged to Harold's 2 witnesses, and there were no fingerprints from Mrs. Grundy, indicating she hadn't handled the document. Experts further confirmed that the signature on the will did not match Ms. Kathleen Grundy's. Later, a computer specialist testified that Harold had edited the medical records in the computer, attributing fatal diseases to patients who did not have them. Following this, numerous witnesses came forward to recount the unusual deaths of their relatives, all of which occurred when Dr. Harold was present. Despite overwhelming evidence, the 56-year-old doctor continues to maintain his innocence and refuses to disclose his motives. The 57-day trial concluded with a guilty verdict for Harold Shipman on 15 counts of murder and 1 count of forgery. Despite the verdict, Shipman remained impassive. The judge sentenced him to 15 life sentences for the murders and a concurrent 4-year sentence for forgery. An extensive investigation later led by Judge Janet Smith examined the medical records of 500 patients who died under Harold's care from 1978 to 1998. This study revealed that Harold had killed at least 215 people. Harold Shipman's motive for murder remains a mystery. There were no signs of violence or sexual abuse, and his victims seemed to have died peacefully in their own homes. This lack of typical serial killer behavior adds to the enigmatic nature of his crimes. Several conflicting theories attempt to explain Harold Shipman's motivations for becoming a serial killer. Some psychoanalysts posit that he harbored a hatred for elderly women, citing his comments about them draining the medical system. Others speculate that he may have been driven by a desire to recreate the circumstances surrounding his mother's death. On the morning of January 13, 2004, Harold Shipman was found dead by hanging, having used a bed sheet. For the victims' relatives, Shipman's suicide meant that he would never face the remainder of his life behind bars, but also that they would never know why he chose to kill their loved ones. What do you think about this story? Discuss with us in the comments section.